Thank you for attending. Thank you for coming for Master GKE Day 2 operation. In this installment, we're going to talk about upgrades, which is great. All right. My name is Yochay Kiriaty. I'm a product manager on the GKE team. And compute with me today, Aurelie and Sergey, and they will present themselves as they come speak for their respective session. Upgrade has been near and dear to my heart because I've been working on it in this team for the last 6-7 years. So we're super excited to be here and to share some of the progress that we have made and all the capabilities and features that we have to make Upgrade a little bit easier for you. All right, so we'll start with kickoff with some overview. And after the overview, Aurelie will come up and basically talk about all the great features, all the capabilities we have to streamline the Upgrade experience. And then we're going to call Sergey to the stage to express and explain how Zoom Info takes, advantage of all of those great features that we have, or majority of them, putting it all together into a really cohesive story and showing you how this thing is happening in real life and helping, customers do great stuff. All right, so we're going to do an overview. And I'll talk through the overview just to set up the context. My goal for the overview was to make it an interactive one, we still will, with the great intention to provide tokens of appreciation for people answering questions. However, I've been just informed that this is against policy. Since I don't want to lose my badge after the session, we'll have to figure out a different way. So I hope you guys will still be interactive and address this. And maybe we can figure out a way to distribute those lovely tokens later. Okay, so just to kick things off, GKE upgrades, right, everybody? Kubernetes upgrades. Kubernetes, if you guys have been long enough on the journey, had 4 versions every year. Then it turns into 3 versions and kind of slow down. And there was alpha and beta and breaking API changes and lots of stuff. And everybody's super excited and yada, yada, yada. So we heard all of that. When we contact the customers about their experience about upgrade and the pain that they're feeling through the upgrade on Kubernetes, specifically on GKE, it kind of goes into certain buckets. And here are the buckets. So what we hear from customers, basically they tell me, please don't upgrade me. Specifically, they don't ask to don't auto-upgrade, right? But then it usually comes to don't upgrade. Don't touch, we'll figure it out on our own. In principle, there's nothing wrong with that approach. GKE even provided kind of capabilities. If you're running on a node channel or static channel, depends on which, how long have you been with the journey, you are able to get to the point where you're not going to upgrade that often and everything that comes with that. So it's not just not auto-upgrade. Usually what we tend to see is that if you don't auto-upgrade, you fall behind. Not just saying everybody here, you're all great, amazing, thank you. But sometimes those things happen. And if I need to remind anybody, this happened 2 weeks ago, give or take, right? And with this, there'll be a lot of, implication moving forward. Together with the don't upgrade me is basically similar on the same practice. It's basically saying, hey, can you please at least let me know before you're going to do anything? So those two translate to ability to just control the timing of the event for better purposes. Cool. So this was the part I'm going to ask people to participate, and imagine that you'll be recipient of whatever over here. We got lovely Flask. And since we don't have real TPUs, we have Legos TPUs for you. OK. We'll figure that out later. Anyway, by show of hands, who is not running on any release channel, like not using release channel at all? Anybody? And one brave soul over here. That's it? Everybody else on release channel? Amazing. If you can keep your hand up because you're the only person. Oh, 2. OK, you can keep your hands up too. OK. Do you happen to, what version are you running? Do you remember what GKE version? 134, OK, so he's not on release channel and he's going up. Okay, good. I was hoping someone would give me a lower number and then we can go back to the previous slide, but that's OK. So, cool, thank you. Let's talk after the session. Okay, and then the next topic that comes to place usually is upgrade at scale. We have customers that are running tens, 50, 100, many hundreds, even many thousands of cluster in production, let alone their dev environment and everything else. And they need to kind of orchestrate and manage all of that together, right? Again, show of hands, who is currently using release channels as we speak? Wow, cool. very cool, thank you. Everybody else, who has like, who's kind of running, let's say above 50 or 100 channel clusters in their production environment? Okay, some of you. For those, just keep your hands up. From those who do, who use release channel? Okay, majority as well. Okay, cool, excellent. No gifts for you, sorry. Okay, and the next comment that comes with this is basically they want to keep their fleet the same, right? Because if you have so many, you will want to make sure that it stays as close to as the function. And then comes all this kind of weird things that a certain patch version is only there for a number of weeks before it goes away. You need to qualify and everything runs kind of chasing after another. So when we talk about all of that, the way we like to think about this is from our point of view, we basically take the approach that we want to automate upgrades by default. So we'll basically configure to the best practices as we see it and believe. And if you disagree, you will have the maximum control to control your destiny and life. And that maximum control translates into the ability to basically choose the pace of your upgrades in terms of the event and the frequency and the maturity. I'm not going to go through all the features. Aurelie is going to go into the extreme details of them. But at the high level is choose your pace, and within the pace you can choose what timing do you want. So when do you want, how to start, when the sequencing, which levels, control plane, data plane, all of that, right? For large fleets, whether you have dev test or just many clusters, or you want to sequence your cluster in a certain order for upgrades, there is release sequencing, which is awesome. Many of you guys are using here, which is great. And then there's reduced disruption, which is generic for the data planes. So all of that basically drives our ability to provide what I believe is a really rich set of functionality that should not get you guys, or should make you very comfortable to be on an automatic kind of automatic or semi-automatic process, which is what we do at GKE. And I believe, for now, so Aurelie will step in and cover all of the great features we have. And I'll see you guys at the end of the Q&A.
All right, so my name is Aurelie Fonteny, and I'm one of the product manager, and I focus on upgrades. And I'm going to talk about all those best practices that you've seen in a previous slide, but more in details. Starting with one of the foundations, which is release channels. So why is release channels so fundamental? It is because it sets the cadence for the auto upgrade. So you're going to choose a release channel between rapid, regular, or stable. And based on that, this is going to define the version that you get in your environment. So how do you choose a release channel? If you want the latest features, you go to rapid. And as you want more and more stability, you go towards regular and then stable. The way it works is that we have version promotion criteria. So version gets available first in rapid, gets promoted to regular, and then to stable. It's it takes time to promote a version between all these different channels. And at any time, if we find an issue, we can decide to not promote a version, to delay the promotion, or to lock some versions if they're not acceptable. So we'll go and see exactly how it looks like through an illustration. But before we do that, I wanted to just review the terminology of version, because a lot of people get confused about terminology when I talk to them about upgrades, because in the Kubernetes OSS terminology, what we refer to as minor, as major consequences, that's the second digit here you can see in a GKE version. And the rest behind a minor version is the patch. So let's just make sure we're aligned. When I talk about minor version, that's the second digit here that introduces new features. And behind that, we have is a patch version. So when we look at the life of a GKE patch, the way it works is that we are first going to introduce it in rapid. So in this case, we have an example. In R05 in February 4, we introduced 133.5 in rapid. And then it's going to take, in the best case scenario, 5 weeks to go from the state of rapid available all the way to the stable auto-upgrade target. And again, if we don't find any issue, in the best case scenario, in 5 weeks, you're going to be on auto-upgrade target in stable. And if we find some issues, a version might not be promoted or might be delayed. So this is basically the life of a GKE patch. And at the end, you get your auto-upgrade in stable. So which release channel is right for you? Again, there's 3 major choices. It's rapid, regular, stable. If you don't know, you go to regular. If you want the highest stability, so basically you wait for enough sock time for most of our clusters to be in stable, then you're in stable. And you want the latest features, it's rapid. And then extended is a mix of regular and stable, where you get extended support. So if you want to opt in into extended support, you go to extended channel temporarily, or you can actually stay there so that you get more flexibility and more control, specifically around end of support policies. No channel is actually not recommended. This is our legacy channel. And for all purposes today, it is a mix of stable and regular. And it's less flexible than release channel. So we do plan at some point to consolidate everybody on release channel. There were some gaps that we filled. And the release channel are much more superior. So now I'm going to move to my demo. All right, so it's actually more like this is what I wanted to show you are the references for release channel and releases in general. We've spent a lot of time on investing in transparency for release and release channel. So there are a few references that you can refer to each time you have questions around it. One is the release notes. So as part of the release note, what you'll get at the beginning is a summary for each release channel of what version is available, what version is the auto-upgrade target, and if you have constraints on your cluster, let's say like an exclusion for minor, you're going to get also like some other special auto-upgrade target. So you can have all that information also in one place. The second resource that's super useful is the GKE release schedule. In there, you see all the minor versions and when they're going to be available in a specific release channel and when we plan on having them as auto-upgrade target. And you also have the end of standard support and end of extended support. In this table, what you'll see is that some dates are in italics. What that denotes is that it's future. This is a best case scenario in terms of when we expect that the version is going to be available or auto-upgrade target. When we're about a quarter away, we'll put quarters. When we are within a quarter, we'll put months. And then when we're within 2 weeks of the best case scenario, we'll put a date. Now, it's still a best case scenario. It's not the actual date. So remember that it can be actually delayed. The other thing that we're adding is we're adding change logs. So today, you have a lot of information on release notes already, but on top of that, we are going to add change logs for each of the version and patches, so you have more information in terms of what's coming from a security feature and issue standpoint. Now I'm going to go back to the presentation. And since I've talked about release channel, the second thing I wanted to talk about is controls. So how do you control upgrades? The first thing is maintenance window. Maintenance window is our recommendation pretty much for most environments. How many of you are using maintenance window? Yeah, we should see pretty much most of our customers using maintenance windows because that allows you to control when upgrades can happen. And then we have maintenance exclusion. Maintenance exclusion is for when upgrades cannot happen. What's important to note is, again, GKE upgrade, auto upgrades by default. So what if you want to have maximum control, you want to disable upgrade, auto upgrade? That's when you use maintenance exclusion. We have maintenance exclusions until the end of support that basically allows you to go into manual mode. And the last item here is disruption interval. We've added that recently. This is for you to specify the interval between 2 consecutive auto upgrade so that we can auto upgrade you often if you have, let's say, large scale clusters, but only have a specific interval between 2 consecutive auto upgrade to a new version. In terms of maintenance exclusion, we have mostly per cluster exclusion on release channels. Last year, what we added is the ability to have a minor exclusion until the end of support. And what I mean by that is that it's tracking the end of support, so it's kind of like no auto upgrade, except it has an explicit end, where we'll enforce end of support policy. So you can basically disable minor and node upgrade like that. We have also added more flexibility around our no upgrades exclusion. It was up to 30 days before, now it's up to 90 days. I mean, it's coming soon. And this is not something that you should use often, but for rare scenarios where you want a self-service and you want to basically freeze your environment for a specific business period, or you want a little bit more flexibility around end of support, you can use that as a one-time exclusion. The other thing that we've heard from a lot of you is, well, actually the per node pool exclusion that we have in node channel can be useful for mixed workload environment. So what if you want to auto upgrade most of your node pools, but some of them need to be manually upgraded? So we are actually introducing a per node pool exclusion in release channel. So that's the equivalent to no node auto upgrade property in node channel. And so that's an exclusion until end of support. These are the associated CLI. You can refer to that in your free time. The first one is the persistent exclusion that's tracking at the end of support. The second one is the minimum disruption interval between 2 auto upgrade. And the last one is the maintenance exclusion per node pool. All right, so now we can control the timing, we can control of upgrade, we can control whether or not they happen and which scope. The next thing is, how do you make sure that you control the sequence of upgrade, especially as you get lots of clusters. GKE has some algorithm by default to make sure we do progressive upgrade, but what if you wanted to say what your pre-prod is and your prod environment? So you can make sure that your rollout first happen in pre-prod and then in prod. So that's where rollout sequencing comes into play. You can upgrade testing first, then staging, and then production. And then you can also mark different stages with labels so that they can, you can also sequence them and upgrade those progressively. So we've had rollout sequencing since 2024, and since then we've worked to address some of the friction points. So specifically what we've added is, we've added a way to add custom stages within an environment so that you can even more progressively sequence your upgrades. Let's say between Canary, you can start with your production Canary cluster and then finish with the rest of it. Or you can say, I'm going to do my low critical cluster, then medium critical, and then high critical. So we're giving you more flexibility. The other thing that we're adding in June is rollout controls. So that means when you have a rollout, you can pause it, resume it, cancel it, and then you can also specify whether it's auto automated, meaning GKE initiated, or user initiated to a specific version. So we'll allow you to also have a scope so that you can say, I want those type of rollouts to be user initiated versus those ones that are automated. So I'm going to just show you a small video of the commands and how you would actually pause a rollout. So in this example, I have a rollout for the control plane to version 134.2. And you can see I can pause it. And then once it's paused, I can resume it. And then if you want, you can also initiate a rollout to a specific version. So that's basically this example here. We're initiating a rollout for nodes to version 135.2, because the other rollout in progress is for the control plane for 135.2. So this is all about adding more control to rollout sequencing. The other item in terms of controls, if we've talked about cluster upgrades, what about downgrade? So we've had downgrades for nodes, we've had downgrades for control plane patches. Now we also have control plane minor upgrades with rollback safety. We've introduced that in December. It's in preview. And what allows you to do is to upgrade your control plane into two separate steps, where your first step is actually rollback safe. So in the first step, we upgrade a binary, and we emulate the previous API behavior. So that is completely rollback safe, and during that time, you can test the performance and the stability of the version. And then in the second step, we activate the new API behavior. So this is also going to be GA soon, and we'll integrate it with our auto upgrades. And then we've talked about cluster upgrades. And what about node upgrades? There's a lot of things you can do also in terms of options to tune the node upgrades. One is the GKE upgrade strategy. So by default, we use something called surge upgrades. So there's lots of mechanism to actually tune it, like for more parallelism or for limited capacity environments. So of course, if you don't have enough capacity, you can't surge. So you will need to actually tune the parameters to address that. We have node upgrade strategy like blue-green that offer rollback safety. We have auto-scale blue-green, which allows you to complete your workloads, and especially for batch workloads. Then you can tune eviction control. That's the pod disruption budget, graceful termination period, and then we have timeout associated with upgrades. And then if you want to get maximum control, you can, again, use the exclusions that I've talked about before. That's how you get max control over node auto upgrade. And if you use accelerators that don't live migrate, you also need to be specifically careful here about the host maintenance guidelines and review that, because those are separate events. Now on to observability. In terms of upgrades, we have a lot of different ways to monitor the upgrades. We have functionality to plan for upgrades, to review upgrades in progress and past upgrades. We have a GUI portal. We have upgrade signals and auto upgrade signals, so that's with the upgrade info API. We've invested a lot also in upgrade event notification, including end of support and eviction blocked. and then in recommendations that are integrated with the recommender API. Now, one of the features that we've just launched that I'm particularly very excited about is the end of support notification for scheduled upgrade. It is in preview today, and it basically addresses the question that I've had like for most of the time I've been the PM on upgrade, which is when is my upgrade going to happen? Please notify me before it happens. So this is exactly what a scheduled upgrade notification is doing. It is opt-in, and again in preview, and you get a notification 72 hours in advance of the auto upgrade. Today it's available for the control plane only, but it's coming also for the nodes, which means like if you wanted to know also ahead of node auto upgrade, you can get also that notification. So I'm going to move to a demo of the scheduled upgrade notification. Let me see. All right. So I have, I have a cluster here. It's on a regular channel. I can see that my upgrades are paused, and the reason why it's paused by GKE. I can see the patch version auto upgrade target that applies to my cluster. I can see that I have a maintenance exclusion configured. I don't have a maintenance window. And you can see that what we've added here is a nice way to review as you configure maintenance window when auto upgrades are permitted and when they're not permitted. So like for instance here, if I add an 8 hours maintenance window, you can see that here they're all permitted, and sometimes they're not permitted, and sometimes they're only partially permitted because for instance, in this case, I have an exclusion for a certain scope. So control plane patches can still happen, but not minor or node upgrades. The other thing you can see here is there is a scheduled upgrade. It's enabled. So because it's enabled, it's going to send some notification ahead of upgrades. And I have a new target available for my cluster because my version is at 133.5. So you can look at the alerts that I've set up. I've set one up for scheduled upgrades. And it's going to match certain notification for scheduled upgrade and notify me through multiple channels. One is email, and then Cloud Pops Up. With Cloud Pops Up, that allows you to do something a little bit more sophisticated, just like, for instance, if you have a minor upgrade, let's say that you do something special, like remediation, and make sure that you have somebody on call and you're ready. Or if you have some upgrades that you do not expect, you can also react. So this documentation is what I'm sending to my email when I get a notification. You can see here the notification itself. It says my cluster is going to go from version 133.5 to 133.8, and it's here in the description. And I'm going to be upgraded after April 25th at a specific time. And then this is an example of email that you would receive with all the information embedded here for the upgrade itself. All right. So, yeah, now I'm going to go back to the presentation. And I'm going to welcome Sergey. Sergey from Zoom Info. I've talked about our GKE upgrades, and now let's hear it from our customer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Aurelie. Okay, let's get started. So my presentation is both the customer success, to brag a little bit about ourselves, and more appreciation to Google team who took this journey with us from starting from feature request until it's running in production and make our life so easy. I'll give you first perspective, the scale of the problem. Who ZoomInfo is? We are a pretty big SaaS company by scale of SaaS. It's 35,000 customers. It's 3,200 employees, 1.2 billion in revenue. We're big. And what ZoomInfo is not, it's not a blue thingy you use to call the colleague. So it's not Zoom, it's a different company. We are a go-to-market platform. The company is big, so the infrastructure is also big. We are 500 plus Google projects. We have 134 AWS projects, accounts, 80 Kubernetes clusters, and 1 million cloud assets, and we have presence across the globe in North America, Europe, and APAC. Going down to the basement. So our GKE presence is bigger than our AWS one, and we're big there. So only GKE, we have, for example, 38 production clusters, the biggest of which is 1,200 plus nodes and tens of thousands workloads. So it's big. And now I'll tell you what's the problem. So before we got this beautiful rollout sequencing feature, it took us about 10 to 12 weeks each year. We had to dedicate 2 engineers every quarter just to deal with upgrades, because it's a lot of things to keep in mind. It's a lot of tribal knowledge to take into consideration. And there is no automation layer which is taking at least part of this headache from you, from engineers. So we hadn't like stage rollout. So each time we decided, like, let's do this first, see how it goes, and then we'll start rolling this out in production, for example. We had all kinds of problems because we had to cut the corners and like split the differences, let's say. And like when you don't have this standardized process, you always have not unstable, but like higher risk than it should be. And now we're going to the solution to all these pain points. Now we have like standardized process. We can implement the strategy. We can have dev rolling out, like receiving the new version from the release channel. It's going to dev fleet, multiple clusters, each with its own maintenance window, each with its own exclusions, release channels, etc. So this group of clusters getting the new version, and we start observing. Once it's completed, we start observing. We have a soak time between this group of clusters dev and the next one. If there is some problem introduced itself, we can always, in the next version, we're going to have this beautiful pause option. Now we can just extend the soak time, or we can just stop, cancel the progress of rolling the new version. so we can build now the automation and adjust it what we need. And the impact was our manual work dropped by 90 or 95%. Like really magic, silver bullet. And like we went from the weeks spending every quarter to just mostly observability, unless something like very unusual, odd, and critical happens. And also, very important, this thing, this automation allow you to contain the blast radius. If something is going wrong, it will harm only the lower environments, dev or staging or small. From what I understand, it's going to be a new feature which is called groups. You can have some sample of clusters and contain the blast radius even more. It will be introduced like in a couple of months. So, key takeaways. What is not a problem? Upgrading GKE cluster is not a problem. Like it's a polished, well-documented, known process. But continuously upgrading tens of GKE clusters across hundreds of GCP projects with limited number of engineering capacity, this is the problem. And for this thing, we need automation. And this automation is rolling sequences. So the solution automates the repetitive task and the workflows. It turns upgrades into manageable and controlled process. It contains the blast radius. And the most important, engineers can do the engineering instead of stealing the firefighter's job. And next, I will just show you a tiny demo, how it looks in a wild nature. So those are clusters. And here is the sequence of rollout. This is the dev fleet. This is the, and this is how we can modify the soak time between the first step and the second step. We can go to the fleet right from there by clicking the link. We can see the status of the fleet. Over here, this is the summary. This is the fleet itself. This is the scale of the fleet. And here we can swap between different versions. If some of the fleet members is blocked for some reason, we can see this. We're going down and see why. This was deliberately took out of the fleet for like specific reasons, because upgrading hundreds of thousands of virtual machines, you are bringing a lot of new functionality on the operating system level. In our case, it was C Group V2, which has not been supported by the workload, so we didn't want to ruin the thing. Yep, this is completed. OK, back to Yochay for the summary.
Yeah, thank you, Sergey. Awesome demo. As you can see, things actually do work, for real. So if there's one thing that you should take away from here, because some of you didn't raise their hand when we asked about release channel, is you really, really want to adopt release channel. As Aurelie hinted, suggested, we might be making changes to some of the non-channel capabilities. So this is something you really want to take care of. The platform support wide variety of capabilities in terms of the functionality we have, whether you want to control your timing, whether you need to, different release schedules, cadence of the upgrade, what gets upgraded, when it gets upgraded, how it gets upgraded, ordering and all that. So there's a lot of capabilities in there. There's tons of work that we have done in the open source as well, like rollback and skip versions back and forth. So you have tons of controls in that. And we'll continue working with the community and drive all of those innovations back into the community and through the GKE. We want to thank you, everybody, for coming here.
Thank you.